When I heard a faint cry deep in the woods, my heart skipped a beat because I knew that sound wasn't just an accident. At first, I thought it was the wind twisting through the branches, the kind of lonely whistle that makes you pull your jacket tighter and keep walking. But then it came again, soft, sharp, and so full of need it stopped me cold. I stood there, listening. The forest was still. No birds, no rustle of leaves, just that tiny, broken sound. My boots sank into the damp earth as I turned, scanning the trees. I don't know why my chest felt so tight. It was just a sound, right? And then I saw it. Pressed against the gnarled roots of a fallen oak was a small gray shape, shaking so hard it barely looked alive. A kitten, out here, in the middle of nowhere. I blinked, trying to make sense of it. There were no houses for miles, no trails except the one I'd taken. How had it survived this far in? I crouched slowly, like any sudden move might shatter it. Its fur was matted, clinging to its tiny frame, and its eyes, God, those eyes, they were too big for its face, glassy and wet, locked on mine like I was the first human it had ever seen. Hey, little one," I whispered, because it felt wrong to speak loud in that silence. It didn't move, didn't hiss, didn't even flinch, just stared at me with this desperate stillness, like it had run out of ways to fight and was waiting for something, anything to happen. I held out my hand, expecting it to bolt the second I came close, but it didn't. When my fingers brushed its fur, it made this sound, not a meow, not even a cry, just a breath, like relief. And then, when I stood up, it did something that broke me. It tried to follow. Its tiny paws dragged through the mud, wobbling, weak, but it kept coming. I took a step back, and it pressed against my boot, clinging like I was the last solid thing in its world. I swear to you, in that moment, something inside me shifted. I'd come out here to clear my head, to be alone. I wasn't looking for anything, least of all this fragile life staring up at me like I was its only chance. What was I supposed to do? Leave it? Walk away and pretend I never heard that cry? Not after those eyes. I scooped it up, feeling bones under fur, the faint thud of a racing heart against my palm. It was so light, it didn't even feel real. And yet, holding it, I felt this strange weight settle on me, like the forest had handed me a secret. As I started back toward the trail, the kitten curled against my chest and let out the tiniest sigh, like it had been holding its breath for days. And I thought, that's it. That's the story. A lost kitten, a random act of kindness, and now we both get to go home. If only I had known. That was the beginning of something I can't explain to this day. When I got home, I didn't even know where to start. A kitten in the forest. How does that happen? I thought maybe someone nearby was missing it, so I put up flyers, called shelters, even asked neighbors. Days passed. Nothing. No one came forward. The little thing stayed with me, curled up in a worn-out box lined with an old sweater. At first, it seemed like any other scared, abandoned animal. But soon, the kitten started doing things that made me wonder if I was losing my mind. At night, it would wake me up, not just with the usual meowing or scratching, but by staring, fixated, at the window, eyes wide, unblinking, as if waiting for something that I couldn't see. I'd lie there, heart pounding, watching it sit perfectly still, almost like a guardian keeping watch over some secret. I started noticing things about those eyes. They weren't kitten's eyes. They were too knowing, too deep. One night, I remember it so clearly, I sat up in bed and whispered, "What are you waiting for?" The kitten didn't blink. It just stared into the darkness beyond the glass, and I felt like I was looking at something ancient, something that had seen things no human could ever understand. I tried to shake it off as imagination. I told myself maybe the kitten was just scared, or maybe I was exhausted and reading too much into it. But every night, the same ritual, the same silence, the same stare. It followed me everywhere during the day, clinging to my legs, rubbing its head against me like it was trying to say, "Don't forget." And then came the seventh night. I thought maybe I was just overthinking everything. Maybe the kitten was just a lost little soul needing comfort. And that was the whole story. But the seventh night changed everything. That night, the silence in the house was different, heavier, like the air itself was holding its breath. The kitten got up from its bed, walked to the window, and sat down as usual. But this time, I saw something I'd never seen before. Its eyes reflected a light, not from inside the room, but from deep outside. A glow that wasn't from any street lamp or passing car. Something wild, something alive. For a moment, I could have sworn the kitten's gaze pierced through the glass, through the darkness, right into my soul, and I felt it, the impossible truth settling like a stone in my chest. This little creature wasn't just lost, it was waiting for something, someone. If only I had known then what was coming. The morning light spilled weakly through my bedroom window, soft and pale, like the world was still waking up. But when I reached out to the spot where the kitten usually slept, curled up tight, it was empty. Gone. Panic slammed into me harder than I expected. I called its name, heart racing, shaking the blankets aside like a man desperate for a lifeline. The house was silent, too silent. I ran outside, into the cool morning air, and called again. No answer, no rustle. No sign of anything but the faint smell of damp earth and pine. I searched everywhere, the garden, the porch, under the bushes, but it was like the kitten had vanished into thin air. The fear clawed at my throat. How could something so small disappear without a trace? I knew the forest was close by. I hesitated, but the silence in the house was worse than the unknown out there. So I stepped onto the familiar trail, calling softly. Branches snapped underfoot. The morning mist clung to the trees like a secret. My voice echoed, but no kitten answered. Then I heard it. Low, deep growls rolling through the shadows like thunder wrapped in velvet. My breath caught. I froze. The hairs on my neck stood up like a warning. I thought of turning back, running home where it was safe. But something, maybe the memory of those knowing eyes, made me keep moving forward. I followed the sound, heart hammering, until the trees opened into a small clearing. And there it was, the kitten, sitting calmly, not an ounce of fear in its body. But it wasn't alone. Behind it, just beyond the edge of the trees, a massive shape loomed, enormous, dark, almost unreal in the early dawn light. I blinked, trying to process what I was seeing. The growls came from this creature, a cougar, its fur mottled and thick, its eyes glowing faintly in the shadows. The kitten looked up at me, then back at the cougar. It didn't flinch, didn't move away. It sat there like the king of this wild kingdom, fearless and sure. And in that moment, I understood. It wasn't lost, it wasn't scared, it was leading me. This wasn't a random rescue. It was a message, a connection that stretched far beyond anything I had ever believed possible. I swallowed hard, feeling something shift inside me, a mixture of fear, awe, and an overwhelming sense that I had stepped into a story much bigger than myself. My legs felt like they were filled with lead, but I forced myself forward, each step shaking with a mixture of fear and something I couldn't quite name. My heart hammered in my chest, loud enough to drown out the low growls that echoed through the trees. The cougar was massive, far bigger than I'd imagined from a distance. Its coat was mottled with dirt and blood, and one of its front legs hung awkwardly, clearly wounded. It limped slightly, eyes sharp but tired. The kitten moved toward the cougar without hesitation, weaving through the tall grass and rubbing its tiny head gently against the cougar's face like it was family. Not prey, not plaything, but kin. I expected a roar or a swipe, some sign that I was an intruder, a threat. But there was nothing. The cougar didn't attack. It watched me, steady and calm, as if it understood I was part of something larger, as if it recognized me. In that moment, my fear twisted into awe. This was no ordinary wild beast. There was something sacred in the way it let me approach, in the way it tolerated my trembling hands reaching out, hesitant to touch. If a predator, fierce, powerful, untamed, could show gratitude and trust, what excuse did we humans have? I knelt down slowly beside them, my breath shallow, my hands trembling. The wound was bad, raw and angry, but the cougar's eyes held a quiet acceptance, like it knew I was here to help. I thought maybe, after all this, it would just let me go, that I could turn around, walk back through the forest, and leave this impossible encounter behind. But no, something bigger was coming. A silence settled, thick and deep, like the forest itself was waiting for what would happen next. And I realized this was far from over. The cougar's limp was worse than I'd first thought. Every step it took was a silent struggle, muscles tense, breathing shallow. It moved with pain, but it didn't run. It stayed. The kitten kept looking at me, those eyes full of something urgent, almost pleading, like it was asking me to choose, to stay or to leave. I could feel my own fear rising. Run. Get out while you still can. This is a wild animal, a predator. What if it turns on me? What if I make it worse? But then I looked into those deep, patient eyes of the cougar, and I knew I couldn't walk away. I dropped to my knees beside it, hands trembling so badly I could barely hold the cloth I'd found in my backpack. For hours, I worked quietly, cleaning the wound as best as I could. The smell of earth and blood filled my nostrils. I talked to it softly, not knowing if it understood my words, but hoping the calm in my voice would reach it. Every time I looked up, the cougar was watching me, steady, unflinching. It trusted me more than I trusted myself. I thought that had to be the miracle, the moment when everything changed, when a wild, fierce creature put its fate in the hands of a stranger. I felt tears burn behind my eyes, and for a moment, I dared to believe that maybe I was part of something sacred. But nature wasn't done with me yet. There was more to see, more to understand, and the story I thought I knew was only just beginning. I was halfway through cleaning the wound when I heard it, a heavy rustling, like thunder in the trees. My heart seized. Out of the shadows stepped another cougar, bigger, broader. Its fur was darker, muscles rippling under the morning light, eyes like molten gold locked onto me with a gaze so fierce I thought I'd freeze forever. I couldn't move, my breath caught in my throat. Every instinct screamed, run, hide, survive, but my body stayed rooted, trapped by fear and awe. The second cougar didn't growl or charge. It just stood there, silent and still, watching me as if weighing my soul. And then something unbelievable happened. The kitten, fearless as ever, slipped between the two massive beasts, weaving like a tiny ambassador of peace. It rubbed against their legs, purred softly, and for a moment, the tension in the clearing dissolved. I realized then, this wasn't chance. This was something deeper, something I couldn't control. In that moment, I understood. I was part of their story now. A thread woven into the wild fabric of their lives, a witness to something sacred and raw. I thought maybe this was it. Maybe the cougars would turn and disappear back into the forest, leaving me stunned but safe. But no, something shifted in the air. The second cougar stepped forward, brushing past me, its breath warm and steady. I felt tears sting my eyes, not from fear, but from a strange, overwhelming sense of connection. Nature had chosen to speak to me in a language I almost understood, and I knew, with every fiber of my being, that this night would change me forever. The forest seemed to hold its breath as the two cougars didn't turn away. Instead, They began to move. Slow, deliberate steps into the thickening woods. The kitten darted ahead like a guide, fearless and sure. My legs trembled, but I followed, heart pounding in a mix of fear and something like wonder. I wasn't sure what I was doing out here, walking side by side with wild predators, but it felt as if I had no choice. The trees grew denser, the shadows longer. Every sound, the crack of a twig, the rustle of leaves, felt amplified. Yet the cougars moved with quiet confidence, as if this path was theirs alone. I kept my distance, but they made no move to chase me away. The kitten glanced back, then forward again, its tiny form weaving through the forest like a silent herald. After what felt like an eternity, we reached a clearing hidden beneath the thick canopy, and there, nestled in a bed of moss and leaves, were the cubs, newborns, fragile and blind, sleeping peacefully beneath the watchful eyes of their mother. I dropped to my knees, the rawness of the moment washing over me like cold water. Life so pure, so vulnerable, it struck a chord deeper than I could have imagined. The cougars didn't seem to mind my presence, their fierce protectiveness softened by a quiet trust. I looked down at those tiny creatures, and tears welled in my eyes, not just for their innocence, but because the wild had trusted me with its most sacred secret, a secret so fragile, so profound, it changed everything I thought I knew about nature and about myself. The moment felt suspended in time. The cougars melted back into the shadows of the forest, moving silently as if they were part of the mist itself. The great male and the injured female vanished between the trees without a sound. But the kitten stayed. It turned once, its eyes locking with mine, clear, unafraid, filled with a quiet understanding that reached deeper than words ever could. It was a farewell, but not a goodbye. The tiny creature gave a last gentle glance, then disappeared with a sudden burst of energy, darting into the thick woods and vanishing from sight. I stood there, frozen. The silence wrapped around me like a heavy cloak. The journey back felt endless. Each step echoed in my bones. My hands trembled, my breath was shallow, and my mind raced with the impossible truth I had just lived through. I was alone again, but nothing was the same. The forest no longer felt like a place to escape to. It was a living, breathing world filled with secrets, kindness, and fierce protectors that I had never imagined. I swear on my life, if someone told me this story, I wouldn't believe them, but I saw it. I was there, and I will never see the world the same way again. Sometimes words hit harder than fists, and that day, nature spoke louder than any scream. If your heart is racing right now, you understand. Follow for more true stories. Nature doesn't want you to forget. If you've ever seen a miracle in the wild, write, "Nature never forgets," because after what I saw, I believe it.